The increases in premiums for EI and CPP are needed to make sure that when people lose their jobs, in the case of EI, or when people retire, when our seniors retire, that the funds are there to ensure that they can collect their pension, or in the case of EI, that they can collect EI. So the effect of not increasing those premiums with the demand for those for EI and CPP would mean that when people retire or when people lose their jobs, they would not have the funds needed to collect EI. The funds wouldn't be there, certainly to keep up with demand, their needs, but also with inflation, and that would apply to CPP as well. Are you concerned about that?
What I'm so concerned about are so many Canadians who, in the private sector, just took it on the chin for 2+ years, while the people who are supposed to be their representative gave themselves pay raise after pay raise after pay raise. And not just that, raise the carbon tax, raise payroll taxes, raise alcohol taxes, and then play word games with Canadians using magic math when the government's own independent budget watchdog shows that the cost of these tax hikes, like the carbon tax, is costing the average household hundreds of dollars this year, even after the rebates. I'm concerned with the tax hikes. I'm concerned that all of this burden is falling on those hardworking Canadians who lost their job during the pandemic, while members of Parliament gave themselves pay raises, while 300,000 bureaucrats received pay raises, while failing crown corporations gave out bonuses and pay raises during the pandemic. So I'm very concerned about the tax.
Thank you very much. I've heard you. So I hear that you're not concerned about the pensioners and the EI recipients who wouldn't receive their funds. That's what I've heard you just say. It sounds to me like the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is actually not supporting the very taxpayers who would struggle the most in an inflationary environment, in the circumstance where they do retire and where they do lose their jobs. And I think that's really, really disappointing. I'd like to move on to that wasn't a question.
I want to start off by apologizing to Mr. Terrazzano for Mr. Baker's very unprofessional behavior today. I know you, Mr. Terrazzano, and the CTF do great work and represent Canadians that have been hit by this cost of living crisis caused by a lot of what Mr. Baker and his government have been doing with out-of-control inflationary spending. I want to give you, Mr. Terrazzano, ample time to respond to Mr. Baker without being cut off.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you, member, with respect. And, I heard something about seniors, and you know who's really getting hammered by the inflation tax? The seniors who are living on fixed income. Now, what we've seen is out-of-control spending for years. Before the pandemic, the feds were spending all-time highs, even after accounting for inflation and population growth. Then, during the pandemic, the Bank of Canada printed $300 billion out of thin air. Then, the cherry on top for hardworking Canadians who are already struggling is the tax hikes. Carbon taxes up, payroll taxes up, and alcohol taxes up. And then just around the corner next year is going to be the second carbon tax coming through fuel regulations. And right in the government's own analysis of those regulations, it shows exactly who's going to be made worse off. Low and middle class Canadians, people who are already suffering from energy poverty, single mothers and seniors living on fixed incomes. And again, that's right from the government's own analysis.